They were mocking the black boy in the restaurant, but when they find out his father is the owner, Jamal Washington swallowed hard as he listened to the laughter coming from the next table. Those three boys his age wouldn't stop pointing in his direction, whispering comments he could hear perfectly. "Look, Mom, who came to dine here today?" one of them said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The 12-year-old boy tried to focus on the menu in his hands, but the words cut like knives. He had arrived 15 minutes ago at that elegant restaurant in Midtown Manhattan, his simple clothes contrasting with the sophisticated environment around him. "You think he has money to pay the bill?" asked another boy, provoking more laughter. Jamal clenched his fists under the table, feeling the heat rise to his face. He knew he shouldn't have come alone, but his father had insisted it was important. An urgent business meeting had delayed him, and he had asked Jamal to go ahead and choose a table. "Hey, kid," called the third boy, getting up from his chair. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Jamal's eyes filled with tears, but he remained firm in his chair. He couldn't leave. His father would arrive any moment, and they had something very important to discuss, something that would change their lives forever. The restaurant manager, Karen Mitchell, watched the scene from afar with her arms crossed. She was a 45-year-old woman, always impeccably dressed, who prided herself on maintaining only the most refined clientele at the Metropolitan. That establishment was known for catering only to the New York elite, and she made a point of preserving that reputation. "Excuse me, young man," said Karen, approaching Jamal's table with a fake smile. "But do you have a reservation?" Jamal looked up, his eyes still watery, and nodded. "My father made the reservation. He'll be here any minute." "I see." Karen looked around, noticing that other customers were also watching the situation. "But you see, dear, this is a very exclusive establishment. Perhaps you'd feel more comfortable somewhere else." "I want to stay here," Jamal said quietly but with determination. "Please." The three boys moved even closer, and Jamal could see their faces clearly. The tallest one, with blonde hair, seemed to be the leader of the group. The other two followed him like shadows, laughing at everything he said. "Seriously, kid, you don't belong here," said the blonde one, throwing a crumpled napkin onto Jamal's table. "Why don't you leave before this gets embarrassing?" An older waitress, Ms. Barbara, who had worked there for over 20 years, watched everything with a heavy heart. She had seen many injustices over the years, but this scene deeply troubled her. The boy was clearly nervous and hurt, but he hadn't done anything wrong. "Karen?" Barbara approached the manager discreetly. "The boy isn't bothering anyone. Why don't we let him stay?" "Barbara," Karen reprimanded her harshly, "you know very well what the standard of this restaurant is. We can't allow just anyone in here. We have our reputation to protect." "But he said his father is coming, and where is this father?" Karen crossed her arms. "It's been over 15 minutes. Clearly it was a misunderstanding." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Jamal fiddled with his phone, sending a message to his father. His hands shook as he typed, and he prayed that Deshaun Washington would arrive soon. He didn't know how much longer he could endure that humiliation. From the other side of the restaurant, the head chef, Marcus Johnson, watched everything from the kitchen pass through. He was a 50-year-old black man who had worked hard his entire life to get where he was. He knew that type of situation well, but the restaurant's hierarchy prevented him from intervening directly. "This is outrageous," Marcus murmured to himself, wringing the dish towel in his hands. Meanwhile, the three boys' parents arrived at the restaurant. They were well-dressed people, typical representatives of the New York elite. Instead of scolding their sons for their behavior, they seemed proud of their attitude. "Well done, Ethan," said the blonde boy's mother, stroking her son's hair. "It's important to maintain standards." "Exactly," agreed another boy's father. "Congratulations, Karen, for maintaining the exclusivity of this place." The situation worsened when Ethan, encouraged by the praise, accidentally knocked a glass of orange juice onto Jamal's table, soaking his papers and staining his beige shirt. "Oops," said Ethan with a mischievous little smile. "My bad." Jamal stood up quickly, trying to dry the papers with napkins. They were important documents his father had asked him to bring, and now they were stained and wet. "There," said Karen, as if she had found the perfect excuse. Now you're causing a disturbance. I'm calling security. But he's the one who knocked it over, Jamal protested, pointing at Ethan. Don't raise your voice at me, young man, Karen replied authoritatively. You're disturbing our other customers. The restaurant's security guard, a large man named Dwayne, reluctantly approached. He wasn't comfortable with the situation, but he had to follow the manager's orders. Please, son, Dwayne said quietly, clearly embarrassed. The manager is asking you to leave. But I didn't do anything wrong. Tears began to stream down Jamal's face. My dad is coming, I swear. Ms. Barbara could no longer stay silent. Even knowing she could lose her job, she stepped forward. Karen, this is wrong. The boy didn't do anything. It was Ethan who knocked the glass over on purpose. Barbara, Karen looked at her coldly. If you keep interfering, I'm going to have to reconsider your position in this establishment. The threat silenced Ms. Barbara, but she continued to watch with indignation. Other employees also began to murmur among themselves, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Jamal looked at his phone again. His father had replied that he was on his way, but the New York City traffic was terrible. He just needed to hold on for a few more minutes. Please, Jamal begged, speaking directly to Karen. Just 5 more minutes. My dad is coming, I promise. Enough! Karen stamped her foot. Dwayne, remove this boy immediately. He's causing an unnecessary scene. At that moment, the main door of the restaurant swung open forcefully, and a well-dressed black man entered hurriedly. Deshaun Washington, 42 years old, was clearly anxious and worried. He wore an impeccable dark suit and carried a leather briefcase. Jamal, he called out, searching for his son with his eyes. Dad! Jamal got up from his chair, relieved. Karen immediately positioned herself between Deshaun and Jamal with a suspicious expression. I'm sorry, sir, but this restaurant operates on a reservation-only basis, she said, blocking Deshaun's path. I have a reservation, Deshaun replied calmly, though his voice showed impatience. Table for 2, under the name Washington. Karen leafed through the reservation book reluctantly. I don't see any reservation under that name. Please check again, Deshaun requested, trying to maintain his composure. Jamal ran to his father, his shirt still wet with juice. Dad, they were throwing me out, he said quietly, clinging to Deshaun's arm. Deshaun observed his son's condition and then looked around, noticing the 3 boys who were still laughing and their families watching them with a superior air. The situation was clear to him. Sir, Karen continued with an increasingly impatient tone, as I said, we have no reservation under your name, and our policy is quite strict regarding people without a reservation. People without a reservation, Deshaun repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the air. That's correct, Karen confirmed, crossing her arms, and frankly, I don't think you would feel comfortable here. This is a very specific environment. The chef, Marcus Johnson, who was still watching from the kitchen, recognized Deshaun immediately. His eyes widened and he whispered to another kitchen employee, My God, do you know who that man is? No, replied the kitchen assistant. Who? But Marcus didn't have time to answer because the situation was escalating quickly in the main dining room. I understand perfectly, said Deshaun, with a calmness that contrasted with the tension in the air. You are saying that people like me and my son are not welcome here. I didn't say that, Karen defended herself, but her expression made it clear that was exactly what she thought. The other customers began to pay more attention to the conversation, and some were whispering among themselves. The parents of the 3 boys moved closer, clearly supporting the manager's attitude. Look, friend, said Ethan's father, a fat middle-aged man. Nothing personal, but you have to understand that this place has its standards. Perhaps you would be more comfortable in another establishment. Standards. Deshaun repeated the word, his voice taking on a harder tone. Jamal hid behind his father, still frightened by the whole situation. He didn't understand why people were being so cruel to them. Yes, standards, confirmed Ethan's mother, a blonde woman with a haughty appearance. This is one of the most exclusive restaurants in New York City. It's not for just anyone. Deshaun took his cell phone from his pocket and dialed a number. What are you doing? Asked Karen suspiciously. Making a call, Deshaun answered simply. Hello, Dr. Thompson? Yes, it's me, Deshaun Washington. I'm here at the Metropolitan and I need you to come here immediately. Bring the documents we discussed yesterday. Karen exchanged worried looks with the other customers. Who was this Dr. Thompson? And why did that man seem so confident? Dad, Jamal tugged on his father's sleeve. Let's go. I don't want to stay here anymore. No, my son. Deshaun placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder. Sometimes in life, we need to face situations. Running away doesn't solve anything. 10 minutes later, a man with graying hair and an expensive suit entered the restaurant. It was Dr. Thompson, a lawyer specializing in business law. He carried a briefcase full of documents and greeted Deshaun with a respectful handshake. Deshaun, as requested, he said, handing over the briefcase. Thank you, Doctor. Deshaun opened the briefcase and took out some documents. Karen, right? Is that your name? The manager nodded, growing more and more nervous. Well, Karen, I would like to show you some interesting papers. Deshaun extended the documents to her. They were certificates, contracts, and deeds. When Karen began to read, her face progressively lost its color. These documents prove that 6 months ago my company acquired the Metropolitan restaurant chain, Deshaun said calmly, including this establishment where we are now. The silence in the restaurant was absolute. Karen looked at the papers, then at Deshaun, then at the papers again. This must be a mistake, she stammered. There is no mistake, Dr. Thompson confirmed. My client is the new legal owner of this restaurant chain. The purchase was made through a holding company, maintaining anonymity for strategic reasons. The parents of the 3 boys paled. Ethan stopped laughing and hid behind his mother. The fat father began to sweat visibly. During these 6 months, Deshaun continued, his voice gaining authority, I kept my identity a secret so I could evaluate the real operation of my establishments. And I must say, I am extremely disappointed with what I found here today. Ms. Barbara, who had defended Jamal, approached hesitantly. Mr. Washington, she said softly. Yes, Barbara, Deshaun smiled at her. I know you. I know you tried to defend my son, and I also know this isn't the first time situations like this have happened in this restaurant. Barbara looked at Karen with a mixture of revenge and satisfaction in her eyes. It's true, sir. Karen always treats people badly if she considers them different. So I've witnessed several similar situations. That's not true, Karen protested desperately. I have always maintained the quality standards of this establishment. Quality standards, Deshaun repeated, his voice laden with irony. Allowing 3 children to publicly humiliate a 4th child is a quality standard. Kicking out customers for no reason is a quality standard. Marcus Johnson finally came out of the kitchen, unable to contain himself any longer. Mr. Washington, he said, approaching, I am the head chef of this restaurant. I want you to know that many of us employees do not agree with these attitudes. Karen creates a toxic environment in here. Marcus, Deshaun nodded, I know your work. You are an exceptional professional. Thank you, sir. Other employees began to approach, encouraged by the presence of the true owner. One by one, they began to report episodes of discrimination and unequal treatment they had witnessed. Karen always charges unauthorized extra fees from certain customers, revealed a waiter. She says it's to ensure better service, but it's actually pure extortion. And she always favors certain customers to the detriment of others, added Barbara. Entire families have been humiliated here. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Deshaun listened to each report attentively, while Karen tried to justify herself. Mr. Washington, please, she begged. I didn't know you were the owner. If I had known... If you had known what? Deshaun interrupted her. Would you have treated my son with respect? The respect you deny others because they aren't rich or don't have the right skin color. The problem, Karen, is that you shouldn't treat people well only when they can harm you. You should treat all people with dignity, regardless of who they are. Jamal, who had been quiet all this time, approached his father. Dad, he said quietly, don't fire her. Everyone was surprised by the boy's request. Why, son? Because maybe she can learn. Everyone deserves a second chance. Deshawn looked at his son with pride. Even after all the humiliation he had endured, Jamal still found room for compassion in his heart. "Are you sure, Jamal?" The boy nodded. Deshawn turned to Karen, who was still visibly shaken. "Very well. My son has offered you a second chance, and I will respect his decision. But there will be conditions." "Anything, Mr. Washington," Karen said, desperate. "First, you will be demoted from manager to general assistant. Barbara will be promoted to general manager of this restaurant." Barbara's eyes widened, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Second," Deshawn continued, "you will participate in a mandatory diversity and inclusion training program. 3 months of intensive course. Third, you will work under the direct supervision of Ms. Barbara for at least 1 year, learning the basics of true hospitality from the ground up. Fourth, any new occurrence of discrimination or unequal treatment will result in immediate termination, with no possibility of appeal." Karen Mitchell nodded repeatedly, grateful to still have a job. "And as for you," Deshawn turned to the 3 boys and their families, "I have a different proposal." The boys' parents exchanged nervous glances. Ethan, Connor, and Tyler, Deshawn called each by name, which he had heard during the commotion. "You will work as volunteers at this restaurant for 2 months, every Saturday from 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon." "What do you mean?" the overweight father protested. "My son is not going to work as a servant." "Your son needs to learn about respect and hard work," Deshawn replied firmly, "and about how his actions affect other people. Either you accept this condition, or you are no longer welcome in any of my restaurants." "How many restaurants do you have?" the blonde mother asked hesitantly. 17 in New York City, 12 in Los Angeles, and I'm expanding to other major cities," Deshawn answered casually. The information silenced everyone present. They finally understood the magnitude of the mistake they had made. "We accept," Ethan's father said quickly. "It's a learning opportunity for the boys." "Perfect. Marcus will be responsible for supervising their work in the kitchen and the dining room." Marcus smiled, already imagining how interesting it would be to teach humility to those spoiled boys. "One last thing," Deshawn addressed everyone present. "Starting today, this restaurant will implement a new policy: 0 tolerance for any type of discrimination. It doesn't matter color, religion, social class, or any other factor. All customers will be treated with the same respect and dignity. And for those employees who agreed with the discriminatory attitude today," he looked specifically at some waiters who had supported Karen, "there will also be mandatory training. Anyone who doesn't want to participate can look for a job elsewhere." In the following weeks, profound transformations began to happen at the Metropolitan. The 3 boys, Ethan, Connor, and Tyler, arrived every Saturday with scowls on their faces, but little by little they began to understand the value of work. On the first day, Marcus put them on dishwashing duty. "This is servants' work," Ethan complained. "All honest work deserves respect," Marcus replied patiently, "and we all start from the bottom." "But I don't need this. My father is rich." "Your father's wealth won't give you character, boy. That you have to build for yourself." Jamal, who visited the restaurant regularly with his father on weekends, watched the 3 boys' progress with curiosity. Little by little, he started talking to them. "Why were you so cruel to me that day?" Jamal asked Ethan during a break. Ethan, covered in soap suds with hands red from washing dishes, thought for a moment. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "I guess because my parents always said we were different from other people. Better. And do you believe that?" "I used to, but now." Ethan looked at his sore hands. "I don't know what to think anymore." Ms. Barbara was adapting well to her role as manager. She implemented several changes in the service, always under Deshawn's guidance. The restaurant began to attract a more diverse clientele, and surprisingly, profits increased. "People want to be treated well, regardless of how much money they have, Ms." Barbara explained to Deshawn during a meeting. "When you offer a quality service with respect, everyone wins." Karen, for her part, was going through a painful but necessary transformation. The diversity course was opening her eyes to prejudices she didn't even know she had. "I grew up hearing that certain people were inferior," she confessed to the course instructor. My family always said that. I never questioned if it was right or wrong. And now? Asked the instructor. Now I see how much I hurt innocent people, how much I perpetuated injustices. The first step toward change is to recognize the mistake. The next is to act differently. In the second month of volunteer work, something surprising happened. Ethan, Connor, and Tyler started working as a team, and even having fun with their tasks. They had developed a genuine friendship with Jamal. "Jamal," said Connor one Saturday while they were organizing the hall, "I wanted to apologize for what we did. We were real idiots." "It's true," agreed Tyler. "We didn't know you and we judged you already. It was very wrong." Jamal smiled, showing impressive maturity for his age. "Thank you for apologizing. That means a lot to me." "Do you want to be our friend?" asked Ethan hesitantly. "I'd like that very much." From that day on, the four boys became inseparable. They started meeting up outside the restaurant, studied together, and the parents of the other three boys had to rethink many of their own prejudices. Marcus Johnson watched this transformation with satisfaction. "Deshawn," he said during a conversation in the kitchen, "what you did here was much more than justice. You planted seeds of change that will grow for generations." "I just did what any father would do to protect his son," Deshawn replied modestly. "No, you did much more than that. You taught compassion where there was hatred. You planted understanding where there was ignorance." 3 months after the initial incident, Karen completed her diversity course. She had changed drastically, both in appearance and personality. She seemed more humble, kinder. "Barbara," she approached the new manager, "I wanted to thank you for being patient with me during these months." "You're welcome, Karen. How are you feeling?" "Ashamed, scared, but also hopeful. I learned a lot about myself these past months, and I didn't like what I saw." "The important thing is that you recognized your mistakes and are working to change. Do you think people will ever forgive me?" Barbara put her hand on Karen's shoulder. "Forgiveness is something you earn with actions, not words. Keep being a better person and people will notice." The most touching moment of this entire transformation came when Karen, after 4 months working as an assistant, approached Jamal during one of his visits to the restaurant. "Jamal," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "I wanted to apologize to you for what I did to you that day, and for all the other times I acted that way toward other people." Jamal, who was now 13, looked her in the eye. "Why did you do that?" Karen took a deep breath before answering. "Because I was raised believing that some people were better than others. My family taught me that skin color, money, and social class defined a person's worth. I never questioned it until that day. And now? Now I know it was wrong, completely wrong. You are a wonderful person, just like your family, and I missed the chance to get to know you because of my foolish prejudices." Jamal extended his hand to her. "I accept your apology." Karen shook the boy's hand with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, that means a lot to me." "Karen," Jamal said, surprising everyone with his maturity, "could you tell your story to other people? Maybe it will help someone going through the same situation you went through." The idea deeply moved Karen. She looked at Deshawn, who had observed the entire conversation. "Mr. Washington, what do you think?" Deshawn smiled, proud to see how his son had managed to turn pain into purpose. "I think it's an excellent idea. We can create a program where people who have gone through personal transformations share their experiences. And that's how the Second Chances Project was born, where the Metropolitan Restaurant became a center for lectures on diversity, inclusion, and personal transformation. Ethan, Connor, and Tyler continued working at the restaurant even after completing their mandatory volunteer period. They had discovered a passion for teamwork and hospitality. "Dad," Ethan said to his father one day, "I want to study hotel management." "Hotel management, but son, you can do anything. You could be a doctor, a lawyer. I want to work with people. I want to make a difference in people's lives, like Jamal and his father did in mine." The parents of the 3 boys had to rethink many of their own beliefs. They started attending the Second Chances Project lectures and questioning their own prejudices. "Deshawn," Connor's overweight father said during one of the lectures, "I wanted to apologize for my behavior that day and for all the things I taught my son." Connor isn't to blame for the beliefs you taught him, Deshawn replied. But now you have the opportunity to build something better together. That's true. We are learning a lot from you. The Metropolitan became known not only for its excellent cuisine, but as a symbol of transformation and inclusion. People from all over New York City came not just to eat, but to participate in the lectures and community events. Ms. Barbara was promoted to regional director of the restaurant chain, and her life experience helped implement the new policies in all establishments. Marcus Johnson became the executive chef of the entire chain and developed a mentorship program for underprivileged youth interested in gastronomy. Cooking is an art that knows no prejudice, he would tell his apprentices. The spice doesn't ask the skin color of the person using it. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 6 months after the initial incident, the restaurant organized a big celebration party. Customers of all ages, colors, and social classes gathered to celebrate the transformations that had taken place. Jamal, now 13 years old, gave a speech to the entire audience. 6 months ago, I walked into this restaurant as a scared and hurt boy. Today, I leave here knowing that one person can make a difference in the lives of many others. My father taught me that true wealth isn't in the money you have, but in the lives you positively touch, and all of you have positively touched my life. The audience applauded, moved. Deshawn watched his son with tears in his eyes, knowing he had raised not just an intelligent young man, but a person of character. Ethan, Connor, and Tyler, Jamal continued, you showed me that people can change when given the right opportunity. Our friendship is proof that forgiveness and understanding are more powerful than hatred. The 3 former bullies, now responsible and conscious young men, applauded along with everyone else. Ms. Barbara, Jamal addressed the new manager, you showed me that there are always good people willing to do what's right, even when it's difficult. Marcus, he looked at the chef, you taught me that honest work, no matter what it is, deserves respect. And Karen, Jamal turned to the former manager, now an assistant but in the process of redemption, you showed me that it's never too late to change, that a person can recognize their mistakes and become a better person. Karen was crying openly, moved by the generosity of the boy she had tried to humiliate. But most importantly, Jamal concluded, I learned that when we face injustice head-on with courage and compassion, we can transform not only our own lives, but the lives of everyone around us. The applause was deafening. Strangers hugged each other, employees cried with emotion, and even the most reserved customers were visibly touched. Deshawn stood up and joined his son on the small makeshift stage. My son Jamal surprises me every day, he said. 6 months ago, I entered this restaurant as a businessman. Today, I leave here as someone who learned that true success isn't just measured in profits, but in lives transformed. This restaurant is no longer just a business to me. It's a symbol that change is possible when people are willing to look beyond their own limitations. Barbara, Deshawn addressed the manager, you will be promoted to Director of Human Development for the entire chain. Your mission will be to implement these values in all of our restaurants. The new position represented not only a significant pay raise, but also the opportunity to positively impact the lives of hundreds of employees. Marcus, Deshawn continued, you will be in charge of a new project, Community Culinary Schools. We will open free courses in low-income neighborhoods, giving opportunities to young people who dream of working in the field. Marcus couldn't believe it. It was a dream he had held for years. And Karen, Deshawn addressed the woman who had discriminated against his son. You will be our first official speaker for the Second Chances Project. Your story of transformation can help other people recognize their own prejudices. Karen stood up, still crying, and walked to the stage. I don't deserve this opportunity, she said, her voice choked. But I will do everything to honor it. I will tell my story to anyone who will listen, in the hope that others won't make the same mistakes I made. Ethan, Connor, and Tyler, Deshawn called the 3 young men. You will receive full scholarships to study hospitality management at the best university in the country, and after graduation you will have guaranteed positions in our company if you wish. The three boys looked at each other, incredulous. Their families were also visibly emotional. "But the condition," Deshawn continued, "is that you become mentors to other young people who go through situations similar to yours, that you help break the cycle of prejudice and discrimination." "We accept," said Ethan, speaking for all three, "and we promise we will never let anyone be treated the way we treated Jamal." The party continued late into the night. People who had arrived as strangers left as friends. Employees who felt undervalued discovered their own potential. Families who lived in bubbles of privilege opened their eyes to a broader reality. In the months that followed, the transformation of the Metropolitan spread throughout Deshawn's restaurant chain. Inclusion and diversity policies became standard in all establishments. The Second Chances Project grew and became an independent organization, offering lectures, workshops, and mentorship programs in schools, companies, and communities across the United States. Barbara implemented a revolutionary employee development program where people from all backgrounds could grow professionally based on merit and dedication, not on connections or appearance. Marcus opened 3 community culinary schools in the first year, training over 100 young people who secured jobs at renowned restaurants in the city. Karen became one of the most sought-after speakers in the country on personal transformation and combating prejudice. Her story moved audiences at universities, corporations, and social organizations. "I was someone who perpetuated injustices without even realizing it," she would often say in her talks. "I thought I was defending standards of quality, when in reality I was defending standards of exclusion." The change began when I was forced to see the world through the eyes of those I discriminated against. It was painful, but necessary. Ethan, Connor, and Tyler graduated with honors in hotel management and became some of the youngest and most promising executives in the industry. They implemented inclusion policies in their own companies and became examples of how people can change radically. "Our friendship with Jamal saved our lives," Connor used to say, "not only because he taught us to be better people, but because he showed us the true meaning of forgiveness and redemption." Jamal grew up to become an exceptional young man, not just because of his academic achievements, but because of the way he treated everyone around him. He developed an interest in social psychology and decided to study the mechanisms behind prejudice and personal transformation. "My goal," he would say, "is to understand how we can build a society where incidents like the one that happened to me become impossible." Deshawn expanded his business to other countries, but always maintained the same values of inclusion and respect. He became a businessman recognized not only for his financial success, but for the positive social impact of his companies. "Money is important," he would often say in interviews, "but the legacy we leave for future generations is far more important." The story of the Metropolitan became a case study in business and social psychology schools across the country. Teachers used the example to show how conflict situations can be transformed into opportunities for growth and change. 5 years after the initial incident, the restaurant organized a special gathering. Everyone involved in the original story was present. Jamal, now 18 and about to enter university, Ethan, Connor, and Tyler, successful young executives, Barbara, Human Development Director for the chain, Marcus, Executive Chef and Director of the community schools, Karen, a nationally recognized speaker, and Deshawn, a respected businessman and philanthropist. 5 years ago, Deshawn said, raising a toast, a 12-year-old boy walked into this restaurant and was humiliated because of the color of his skin. Today, that same boy is here as proof that human dignity cannot be broken by prejudice or ignorance. But more importantly, he continued, we all learned that true transformation happens when we choose to see the humanity in each other, regardless of our superficial differences. Jamal stood up to make his own toast. 5 years ago, I was just a victim. Today, I am a survivor who has become an agent of change. All of you were part of this transformation. Ethan, Connor, and Tyler, you taught me that former enemies can become the best of friends when there is a willingness for genuine change. Barbara, you showed me that there are always courageous people willing to do what is right, even when it's difficult. Marcus, you taught me that dignity in work doesn't depend on the type of work we do, but on how we do that work. Karen, You showed me that redemption is possible for anyone willing to face their own demons and choose to be better. And Dad, Jamal turned to Deshawn, you taught me that power and privilege should be used to protect and lift others up, not to humiliate them. But most importantly, Jamal concluded, all of you have shown me that a single decision to confront injustice can create waves of transformation that spread far beyond what we can imagine. The toast was made in reverent silence, each person reflecting on their own journey of transformation. Ms. Barbara broke the silence. You know what moment marked me the most in this whole story? Everyone looked at her with curiosity. It was when Jamal asked his father not to fire Karen. A 12-year-old boy who had been humiliated and hurt still found space in his heart for compassion and a second chance. That taught me that genuine kindness doesn't depend on age or experience. It depends on choice. Karen nodded, visibly moved. That moment changed my life. If Jamal had asked for me to be fired, I probably would have left here blaming everyone but myself. But his compassion forced me to look in the mirror and see who I really was. And it gave me the opportunity to become who I wanted to be. Marcus raised his glass again. So, let's toast not only to the transformations that have happened, but to the transformations that are yet to happen, because every person who leaves this restaurant carries a little bit of that message out into the world. To the next generation, said Deshawn. To the next generation, everyone repeated in unison. The evening ended with hugs, tears of joy, and the certainty that this story was much more than an incident in a restaurant. It was an example of how human beings can choose love over hate, understanding over prejudice, and transformation over stagnation. Jamal looked around the restaurant one last time before leaving. The walls that had once witnessed his humiliation were now decorated with photos of graduates from the community schools, certificates of recognition for social work, and thank you letters from people whose lives had been touched by the Second Chances project. Dad, he said to Deshawn as they walked to the car, do you think our story will inspire other people? Deshawn put his arm around his son's shoulder. My son, our story is already inspiring other people. Every employee who treats all customers with respect, every young person who graduates from our community schools, every speaker who shares their personal transformation, they are all spreading this message of hope and change. But most importantly, Deshawn continued, you learned that the true victory isn't getting revenge on those who hurt us, but finding ways to turn pain into purpose. Jamal smiled, looking back one last time at the Metropolitan, where golden light still shone in the windows, symbolizing a beacon of hope amid the darkness of prejudice and discrimination. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course, my son. If you had known from the beginning that you owned this restaurant, would you have let me go through all that humiliation? Deshawn stopped walking and looked deeply into his son's eyes. Jamal, I never planned for you to go through that. It was one of the most painful experiences of my life, seeing my son treated that way. But if you could go back in time and avoid it all, Deshawn thought carefully before answering. You know, my son, I would change how things happened. I wish you had never been hurt, but I can't deny that difficult experience turned into something bigger than both of us. How many lives were transformed because of that day? How many prejudices were questioned? How many second chances were given? Jamal nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. Sometimes the most difficult experiences become our greatest teachers, he replied, showing impressive wisdom for his 18 years. Exactly. And you had the courage to turn your pain into something that benefited hundreds of other people. Father and son got into the car in contemplative silence. As they drove through the lit streets of New York City, they both knew that night marked not an end, but a new beginning. Jamal looked out the window, watching the people on the streets, each carrying their own stories, prejudices, hopes, and possibilities for transformation. Dad, I know what I want to do with my life. What, son? I want to study psychology and work with social transformation programs. I want to help other kids who go through situations like I did. And I also want to help people like Karen, who are trapped in harmful thought patterns, find a path to change. Deshawn smiled, knowing he had raised not just a son, but a future agent of social transformation. You have my full support, Jamal, and all the resources of our company will be available for your projects. Thank you, Dad. But I want to build this with my own hands too. I want people to know that real change comes from within, not from money or influence. You're right. Money can open doors, but true transformation happens in people's hearts. When they got home, Jamal went straight to his room and opened a notebook where he had been writing his reflections on the entire experience of the last 5 years. Today, I closed an important chapter of my life, he wrote. But I also started a new one. I learned that being a victim is something that happens to us, but being a survivor is a choice we make. Ethan, Connor, and Tyler taught me that people can change when they are confronted with the real consequences of their actions. Ms. Barbara showed me that there are always allies willing to fight for what is right. Marcus taught me that dignity doesn't depend on social position. Karen proved to me that redemption is possible for anyone. But most of all, my father taught me that true power is used to lift others up, not to get revenge. Tomorrow begins a new journey. A journey where I will use everything I've learned to help others find their own path of transformation and hope. Jamal closed the notebook and looked out his bedroom window. The city of New York stretched out endlessly before him, full of people who might be going through their own situations of prejudice, discrimination, or hopelessness. But now he knew he had a mission, to be a beacon of hope for those who needed it most, just as so many people had been beacons for him. At the Metropolitan, the lights finally went out, but the message of transformation and hope that was born within those walls would continue to shine in the hearts of all who were touched by that extraordinary story. And somewhere in the city, another child might be going through an unfair situation, not knowing that there were people like Jamal, Deshawn, Ms. Barbara, Marcus, and even Karen, working to create a world where dignity and respect were universal rights, not privileges for a few. The story of the boy who was humiliated in a restaurant had become the story of a transformed community, and it would continue to spread, one life at a time, one heart at a time, one second chance at a time. End of story. And you, dear listener, what did you think of this incredible journey of transformation? Do you believe people can really change when confronted with the consequences of their actions? Share your opinion in the comments and tell us if you have ever witnessed or lived through a similar situation. Your experience may inspire other viewers. Don't forget to leave your like if this story touched your heart, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories that show how forgiveness and second chances can transform lives. Thank you so much for your company.